Uh, my name is Jeff Green. I'm the editor-in-chief of Computer Gaming World magazine, so I'm representing way old media here because I write for a monthly print magazine. For those of you who don't know they still exist, they do, and I run one. We're also part of the One-Up network for those of you who are now more online, so we do have some 21st century stuff going on. I'm going to introduce the panel here, starting from the far end down. We all just met about an hour ago, and all of these distinguished people have long resumes, so forgive me in advance if I don't cite all of your achievements, but you may bring them up. And that empty chair at the far end there is supposed to be Nolan Bushnell, but he could not make it, so I don't know what happened there. We scared him off. Okay, so at the far end there we have Sally Frattini, who is a senior VP, an executive in charge of production at MTV. And please, Sally and everybody else, tell me if I got anything wrong or if anything in the guidebook was wrong or whatever. She is executive producer. She has taken part in some key events at MTV, including the Video Music Awards, the NFL Super Bowl 35, and was that the Janet Jackson one, or was that the 30? Okay, so that's your fault. That whole.
I don't think that was part of the panel discussion today.
Okay, we're going to gloss right over that.
On the description
All right, I can't
page.
heckle the panelists.
Yeah.
She actually was involved in some gaming stuff recently. The big Xbox 360 reveal was a huge coup for MTV. They beat such publications as My Magazine in getting that scoop. So that was cool. They've also been doing some video game tournaments on MTV itself, right?
And MTV Overdrive.
And MTV Overdrive. Okay, next to her is Don Daglow, who is the founder, president, and CEO of Stormfront Studios, a venerable old gaming company. They've been around since my youth. No, not really. Okay, my young adulthood. They'd done Earl Weaver baseball back in the day, all sorts of wonderful, extraordinary games. Actually, Don also worked at the Intellivision division of Mattel, for those folks who are familiar with that, EA and Broderbund in the past. Most recently, Don has been involved in work on the Two Towers Lord of the Rings game, which was a tie-in with the movie, obviously. So that's a whole new experience that Don had, and hopefully you'll have some insight on that here. Next to Don, we have Nicholas Longano, who is the president of Massive Incorporated, who does dynamic in-game advertising. If I understand this correctly, it will stream ads into the games we're playing. So if I'm driving around in my car in whatever Need for Speed, I might pass a McDonald's ad, and that is going to be Nicholas's fault. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, you bastard. Okay. Next to Nicholas, we have David Getson, who is the co-founder and CEO of GNet Media. David seems to, his duties seem to span a few things here. David is an independent producer of game programming, so programming about games on TV, but he also works with game publishers to produce video content in support of those games, marketing material, right?
Yep.
Okay. And finally, we have John Goldman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Foundation 9. Foundation 9, actually we're going to need John to tell us more about what's going on there. I know John in terms of his most recent engagement, which is at Backbone Entertainment. Backbone Entertainment created an original IP called Death Jr. This was something that was created at once over multiple media, or it's actually still in progress. Video game, comic book, feature film. So there's all sorts of unique challenges there that we'll get into. Okay, so from the descriptions there, you can tell we're kind of spanning a huge huge realm of job responsibilities and interests, and what we tried to come to grips with backstage was where's our common ground in this topic, which is franchising of a property over multiple media, which can include games, it can include movies, DVDs, whatever, broadband. And a lot of it came down to, when we were talking just casually, was the notion of mainstream media, such as Sally with MTV, trying to attract hardcore gamers who are a notoriously difficult bunch, as well as the ability for game producers, programmers who are involved in big franchises like Lord of the Rings, as Don worked on, to also attract that crowd, to get these games taken seriously. So there's a lot to cover, and I thought I would start with just one very quick anecdote, and then I will definitely stop talking. And that anecdote is that just yesterday up in San Francisco, I was on a podcast with a bunch of game journalists, so we're all very dorky, full-time gamer types, and we were talking about what we were playing right now. That was the subject of the podcast. And pretty much everybody else on the panel mentioned a game called Oblivion, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which I would wager to venture probably not very many people in this room have ever heard of. But in the hardcore gaming community, this is the big deal that was happening right now. But I was playing The Godfather all weekend. Now, this game got tons and tons of media press. Electronic Arts poured, it was tens of millions of dollars into this game. They got a lot of the voice acting from the original actors from the 1974 movie, not the least of whom was Marlon Brando. So they pulled some old vocal feeds out of an archive for him. Al Pacino did not participate, so they had a likeness for him. But when I mentioned that I was playing The Godfather, which actually is not a bad game, it's not a great game, but it's not bad, I was kind of almost laughed out of the podcast because I had no credibility in playing that game amongst the hardcore gamers. The cool game was Oblivion, the game that mainstream folks haven't heard of, and the uncool game was The Godfather. That might go contrary to what folks high up the chain at Paramount would think, or high up the chain at EA would think. It was somehow just not cool to play a game version of a movie. And this is true whether the game is good or not. It's actually loosened up a bit. It's gotten better. With EA has done or Activision actually has done a fine job with X-Men games and Spider-Man games. So we're seeing some more movement towards actual cool gaming within a big mainstream license. We're not quite there yet, and that anecdote is something I just wanted to share and see if anybody on the panel had a comment on Godfather versus Oblivion. Do you think The Godfather was a good idea for a game? And would you play it? If you were marketing it, what would you do to convince gamers? And I know you don't know the game, or you might not, but what would you do to make Godfather cool to 15-year-olds who weren't alive when this movie came out? Anyone?
Well, you touch on a number of different factors there. And one is the attractiveness of licensed product versus original IP, why someone would do a Godfather versus an Oblivion or original game. You also talk about the gulf between hardcore and casual, or hardcore and non-hardcore gamers, and how vicious and wide that divide actually is. And I'll just touch on that one for a second.
Sure.
One of the things we do is we helped Spike with the creation of the Video Game Awards, say. And this was an aggressively mass market attempt at capturing the gaming culture. And we found that the hardcore gamers were at first violently opposed to it. And to me, what it evoked was probably the film metaphor, that there are purists in film, cinephiles that are very hardcore about what a film should be, what it shouldn't be, what it should achieve. And then as film became more and more of a corporate and commercialized entertainment medium, that divide between the hardcore and the non-hardcore, it starts to melt away because they have less impact on the future of the business and the health of the business. So I think it's an evolving thing. The divide between hardcore and non-hardcore is slowly fading away, I think, in terms of its impact on games.
Do you feel like we're there yet? I mean, for you and for Sally, trying to make programs on television for gamers, do you feel like this is a viable format?
Yeah, I think critical mass is just being reached right now. We have another show on Spike right now called Fresh Baked Video Games on Saturday night, and its claim to fame or infamy is that it's a sketch comedy show about games. It is definitively not a hardcore gamer show, and it was a bold experiment on the part of Spike to take that approach, and it seems to be working. I think with the onset of the new platforms and the continuation of game budgets and the broadening of the media now and forevermore, and television is an absolutely viable place to reach gamers. I think the internet is probably an easier place to reach gamers, but at this point, gaming being as mainstream as it is, anywhere where you can consume media is a viable place to reach gamers.
You don't necessarily have to consider the internet as competition, right? Would this be another avenue, say?
I just from an MTV perspective, and obviously our core audience are the 12 to 24-year-olds, and obviously we work with a lot of these gaming companies to market their games and to reach the younger audience. Godfather, we did a sneak preview last fall during Gamers Week before anything was really released. We had an exclusive property that we released on MTV Overdrive, our broadband channel, as well as MTV within TRL, which is actually a primarily female-driven daily live show on MTV. So I think the marketers were smart to try to reach that younger audience at a very early time before the game was actually released. And obviously now on our channel you'll see a lot of advertising around it. The hardcore gamers you can't alienate, but you need to reach a broader audience. And everything we do as far as programming, we try to really balance that. Last year during Gamers Week, we had shows like Sims Life that was really driven more to the female, but it also talked about the lives of the players, of people that are playing Sims Life, which was, for those of you who play Sims, it's kind of unique to see actually who real people are that are kind of creating this virtual life for themselves. Other games like Tony Hawk, which was totally broad because Tony Hawk is Tony Hawk, and Tony Hawk Underground was a huge game this year and huge for our audience. We did a making of that game. So, and then there was Xbox. Xbox launched with MTV. You had to really give the hardcore people something to see about how the game was developed, which is what you all do, because that's what they want to see, versus everybody else who's just like, wow, there's this new console coming out and I gotta have it. How does it work and what are the new games? So I think in the world of TV, we straddle that, and now with broadband attached to really our everyday lives, it really allows you to keep a lot of the hardcore stuff in broadband and more of the broader angles on television to kind of please that mass audience.
I'll throw one more thing in there about the reaching both hardcore and non-hardcore. The hardcore are people who play games sort of religiously, and they care very much about it. The non-hardcore like games because they're silly and fun diversions. The one thing that kind of bridges both of them in our experience, having tried to create content on all platforms for the widest possible audience, is humor. Because hardcore gamers and non-hardcore gamers both laugh at the same sorts of things. If you try to cover games as a news or technical pursuit, the non-gamers are rolling their eyes back. But if you tap into the humor, the absurd and silly, irreverent humor that is sort of part of the game culture, that's something that the hardcore gamers and the hardcore gamers can both embrace. That's been a magic bullet that's worked for us.
Right.
And I think as a game creator, there's a couple of ways to look at defining that hardcore. In one respect, they're the people who may be buying 2 games a month, so maybe 24 games a year. So the number of actual dollars they spend and the percentage of their disposable income and the percentage of their hours of free time that they're spending on games is much higher, but they're actually a minority in the marketplace. The mass market gamer or the everyday gamer may only buy 2 or 3 games a year, will spend fewer hours, but there are so many more of them that they are the ones who drive the big hits. The hardcore gamer wants to have greater depth, they want to get more value for their money, they want more challenge, and very often they want to be part of an exclusive club. They actually want a game to be more complex and difficult to learn. They want more of a learning curve, because after I've learned it, I'm now special. Whereas the casual gamer is kind of like, I'm tired, it's 10 o'clock at night, I want to play for an hour. Don't make this tough on me, buddy. Give me something I can play. Licenses are going to be, such as Godfather, to come back to your original question, are going to be more valuable to that casual gamer because You know the characters before you start. You know what you're getting. You know you already care about those characters or that sport or that setting before the game begins. And the hardcore are more, I'm willing to join your exclusive club, bring me in. I don't necessarily need that easy step in.
Right. The problem there, as far as I see, is that with a game like The Godfather, which they actually charge more for than they normally do, so that was over $60 that game. Well, who's going to pay for a casual gamer? You know, I find it hard to believe is going to want to pay $60 for a game, and if they do, you know, it just seems like to me the job for the programmers like yourselves or the producers is almost like a no-win situation. If you make it too easy for the casual ones who are just attracted by the license, well, the hardcore gamers are going to see right through it and they're going to hate your game. But if you just aim it at the hardcore, then the casual players will get turned off within the first hour.
Well,
And in fact, I should be careful one thing about terminology, that I use the term casual lightly, and casual gaming
Sure.
is actually becoming an actual defined term referring to people who are maybe playing for 10 or 20 minutes at a time on games that are downloaded online for $5 or $10. So mass market gamer is a term that I'm not particularly fond of, but
Right.
that refers to the people who are buying 2 or 3 games a year, but they are playing on console. They do give it a lot of energy, and they do represent the place where the multi-million-dollar sellers come. So I just want to correct my terminology since I got sloppy.
Right.
And I think it's also safe to say that movie-based games or licensed properties are traditionally handicapped when it comes to reviews. And when I make that statement, what I'm saying there is effectively you start out at a point where most games are judged 10 out of 10 and then you lose points. Movie-based games are actually their starting point is really 9 out of 10 because there is a bias against them amongst reviewers because their predecessors have been of such poor quality because developers have traditionally only developed the game for a period of about 12 months. You can't bake a game in 12 months, yet they're trying to launch day and date with a movie release. Then if you add on top of it the fact that you can't actually ride the coattails of the movie if you're not releasing day and date, you're additionally handicapped. So therefore, you have to create a game that's 11 out of 10 as a starting point to get gamers to pay $60. And the barriers to entry or the barriers to purchase are enormous. $60. I can go watch a movie and spend $10. Okay, $10. It wasn't a bad movie. I can take a risk. But you're asking me to spend $60 of my hard-earned disposable income. It is an enormous barrier. And that's why, from a development perspective, you've got to try harder when you're looking at movie-based games.
It's a great point. I mean, you know, I can tell you that my review of The Godfather when I write it up is basically going to be, guess what? It doesn't suck. Because I know that my audience is expecting it to suck. But then contrarily, when a game developer does come through with a great game based on a license, the Lord of the Rings games recently have been fantastic. King Kong was another great example, because in that case, Ubisoft went out, reached out to a French developer who had a great reputation in the gaming community as a developer. He wasn't just a marketing wing of New Line Cinema. They came up with something that the hardcore could rally behind. Spider-Man, another good one. John, I want to bring you in because you have a very different perspective here than what you're trying to do with Death Jr. In your case, you have an original IP. This is something that none of us have seen before, that you've had to create from scratch and get into people's minds from scratch. This is the opposite of The Godfather. And you're trying to hit a big audience in terms of movies, comic books, and video games. So what kind of challenges do you have there, and even in terms of how it relates to this hardcore versus casual talk we're having?
Well, I should actually mention that we did over 40 titles last year. We're arguably the largest independent developer, so we do licensed properties, movie-based properties, kids titles. We do a lot of development, and Death Jr. was one very important initiative for us. And the key insight we had as we were trying to put that project together was that you need to have the right entry point. And a lot of independents try and pitch ideas, and for a variety of reasons, you don't get that into production, or if you do get it into production, you give up all your rights in that IP, which negates some of the benefits of making that investment. So for us, the right entry point turned out to be comic books, and we then were able to expand not only into the areas you suggested, but we had apparel licenses. I just did a Halloween costume contract for next year, some very nice specialty action figures. But one of the things that tied this all together is that we were actually targeting the aficionado audience, not the mass market audience. So when we went after an apparel licensee, we went after somebody who distributes in places like Hot Topic, not in places like Walmart. Similarly, we went after an action figure maker that also goes to that kind of specialty retail market. So you're not going to sell a lot of units, but what we wanted to do is create a little bit of buzz. And we went to places like Comic-Con and other venues where the consumer is. We not only showed our products, but showed the game and got people playing the game. So I'd say by the time Death Jr. launched, or previous to when Death Jr. launched as a game, it was already in the top 20 on IGN as an anticipated game. So we created a lot of buzz among the faithful, and that ultimately translated into sales and sequels for us that will be showing up in subsequent years.
What was interesting there too, in terms of its placement on IGN, in terms of its awareness on message boards and
Is the game wasn't even out yet.
Right.
That was unheard of.
Right.
Is
And-
that we had an incredible amount of awareness before the game even hit the shelves.
And in this case, your original IP was an advantage, a big advantage, because what gamers were getting was something new, or they perceived as something new created for them.
Well, I think you also have to look, certainly in that regard, you have to look at the platform. So we launched it on PSP, which, number one, it was a new platform at the time, so that's actually a very advantageous time to have new IP, because a lot of the other publishers will be mitigating the risk by supporting old franchises and not really investing in new IP. Two, it's sort of a teen to adult skewing platform, so it was a good fit for this particular IP. And three, the investment risk on that platform is certainly a lot less than it would be on PlayStation 3 by comparison.
John, was it the driving marketing force of that, the comic book property, was that what generated the first initial?
The comic book was actually, so early on, the development team was pitching it like any other game as a PlayStation 2 game. And it wasn't really getting a lot of traction because it was late in the PlayStation 2 cycle and nobody wanted to invest in new IP on that platform. And again, the real insight was, yes, the comic book, taking that down to Comic-Con and investing in the IP as IP instead of, hey, we're making a game. We actually focused on, we're making a story, a narrative, a universe. There are characters here that people can connect to. And sure enough, a lot of people started swarming around it at Comic-Con, both consumers and industry people, and we were able to leverage that in terms of a broader strategy.
So I think that's an interesting point about original IP and trying to launch original IP as sort of a responsibility, not just a need, but a responsibility to disseminate that original IP through every media that you can possibly and legitimately distribute it on in various formats. It's not, a game can't just be a game anymore. It is a fantasy, it's a story, it's characters, it's a brand, and to just do the standard mix of banner ads, magazine pages, and 30-second spots in the ocean of those, you need something else. So actually, by way of example, one half of our business is working with game publishers to make this kind of content, this entertainment that doubles as marketing. And we actually worked with one of your companies on the collective with a recent game release for Atari called Mark Echo's Getting Up, which is a graffiti-inspired game. And for the limited edition, this is original IP as well, very challenging. You make a 30-minute documentary that could go to, say, TV, some short-form strategic content about how to play the game that can go online, making of content that can go on DVDs that get packaged with the magazines about the games. I think this, for me, I think this is a very interesting trend in terms of marketing a game and getting original IP out. Is there's so many different platforms to distribute so many different types of content on. You need to be distributing mobisodes of a game and comic books of a game.
Would you really count Mark Echo as a original IP? I mean, because
absolutely, it's not a game IP. I mean, Mark Echo is a marketing company that so far markets clothing.
Right.
It's definitely a lifestyle brand, and all those guys are gamers. They're really into the gaming culture. And by the way, I mean, many people have come up to and say it's really the nicest special edition video game software they've seen.
Thank you very much.
Sally, what would it take to get MTV to what kind of difficulties or would you not have them for John have to get something like Death Jr. to get the attention of MTV? I mean, you mentioned that you were able to get like the Godfather footage on MTV and other big time games, Xbox 360 launch. What would it take to get this kind of game that maybe doesn't have that mainstream awareness yet?
Well, actually, I believe Death Jr. did a video mod with MTV2
Aha.
with
That's right,
My
I was
Chemical
gonna say that.
Romance, which
There's
was
my
probably
answer.
one of your largest marketing tools that you can get out there. And I think a lot of that comes from the actual artists who either love the game or that's just how it's pitched. But when you're really combining the players that are within the game with the artist and the music, I think that's actually been really appealing for MTV2. And allowed us the rights to do that. A lot of the mainstream games, we can't get the rights. I mean, having the content rights across all the platforms is obviously one of the biggest challenges that we have from a TV perspective. And we ask for rights for every platform in perpetuity across the world for everything we do. And it really is an advantage to the product when we have those rights, because you've got the TV elements, MTV, MTV2, MTVU. You have the Overdrive, you have Uber, which is MTVU, our college network's broadband channel, as well as, you know, all the other channels of MTV in the world of broadband and .com, and of course now with wireless. So the more rights we can get for some of these original IPs, the better. The thicker the package, easier to market, and you know, richer across the board. But it can be challenging. Although My Chemical Romance Death Jr. piece was actually pretty cool.
That was nice, and it was actually, ironically, at the same time, there was a mod of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, which we also did. But I think the point you brought up ties in with what Don was saying about really reaching the audience. And what's interesting about video gaming is you can't just come up with a marketing concept such as let's revitalize Godfather, whereas in other media, people can actually sit through and enjoy a B movie. I just sat through the Amanda Bynes teen movie with my daughters and managed to enjoy it. Surprisingly, I think with video games, B or C content is actually extremely frustrating, and the content has to ring true, and it is very difficult, as Nicholas said, to make that happen for day and date releases of movies. But if it doesn't ring true enough as a fun, interactive play experience, that game's going to bomb no matter what sort of awareness you generate.
Nicholas, let's talk a little bit about the advertising aspect, because we haven't really touched on that. And that, to me, it's another. When I was thinking about this last night, I was thinking, well, this is a case of where probably a lot of your clients are thinking, well, if these kids aren't going to the movies much anymore, if they're watching TV less, we have to go where they are, right? We have to put our product in front of their eyes, which would be in video games. But do you find that you face the same kind of challenges in terms of this, hardcore gamer resistance to what you're trying to do with your ads? Is it easily accepted? And also, is this pretty much the way of the future? Are we going to see a lot more in-game advertising?
Yeah, good questions. It's definitely the wave of the future. In terms of the hardcore gamer, we have a number of hardcore titles, if you want to classify them as such, but based on the volume that they sell through, such as Splinter Cells and Rainbow Sixes of this world, they are considered a little bit more mainstream. However, if you execute, and it's all in the execution, as a developer, as you're planning through your video game, it has to make sense. As long as you incorporate advertising in a way that's natural and fits the video game, and then it's not forced around it, so that you don't look like you're capitalizing on a new revenue stream at the sacrifice of a game player's experience, you're going to make a lot of money.
So what would examples of that be like, of good in-game advertising?
Okay, good in-game advertising are, as I referred to, are ads that fit normally in the game, naturally in the game. I'll give an example of, let's take a Times Square. Times Square is chock-a-block full of advertising. I see a lot of games out there that try and create urban environments, whether they're racing titles, etc. And the development teams actually go to the trouble of putting together fake ads. Doesn't make sense. You can actually generate significant revenues. And let me put this out there, because we were talking about IP and the expense of creating an original IP. The cost of creating an IP can be offset because advertising generates today anywhere between $2 to $3 per unit, and a publisher normally makes $5 to $6 a box. So that's a lift of anywhere between 30–40% on the bottom line. And you're not alienating gamers, because the last thing, the gamers are our bread and butter. We have to do this in a manner that respects them, that doesn't treat them as idiots. Oh my God, we're going to sneak advertising in your game. No, it's there, and it's done in a way that respects them, and we leave that to the development teams. You tell us where you want to put the ads. Where does it make sense for your game? If you're
And in fact, the leverage on this has switched several times in game history. There have been times when licensors have been getting paid for the privilege of having the advertising in games, and there have been other times in life when advertisers have been paying to put the exact same sign in the exact same space. It's all a matter of who feels they have the leverage and why.
Mm-hmm. This is a coveted audience, and advertisers are paying high CPMs in order to reach the audience, because for 93 minutes, that audience is engaged with your game and nothing else. They can't multitask. So as long as it's done properly, there are revenues to be had by licensors, developers, and publishers, or the share in the experience.
I think some of the stuff you've done has been like, say, streaming video, say, on a video screen within the game, right? Like a character will walk by a screen and they'll actually see an ad running.
Right, there's proximity triggers within a game, so that as you approach a particular screen, it'll turn from a two-dimensional billboard into a 5-second commercial. It's up to the gamer. We don't stop gameplay. It's up to the gamer to determine whether or not they want to watch it. And the benefit to the gamer at the end of the day, they're getting games for free, because the revenue is being generated by advertising, such as games as Anarchy Online and PlanetSide, which was just announced, are such that they can actually justify giving the games for free to gamers.
I always thought it was funny that there was a debate as to whether or not advertising in games was going to work, or if it should happen. I mean, has there ever been a media that's consumed en masse that hasn't supported advertising? It needs to happen. It's arguably the greatest venue for advertising in any form of entertainment, because you have virtual worlds that we're used to seeing advertising in, very often entertaining advertising, and it's inevitable and it's great. What's great about what they're doing is they have mechanisms of actually measuring the efficacy of the ads, so that you don't have to pay for ads that don't get seen so much, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
Right, if it worked like a commercial where, I'm about to shoot this guy and it pauses and says, we'll see whether you shot him after this word
It's
from.
totally embedded in the experience of the game. I mean, I don't know if anyone here has played Fight Night Round 3, which is one of the greatest games ever made, but there's, if you're a fan of boxing, you're used to seeing sponsored areas and aspects of the competition, and in the new version of it, it's so organically part of the experience.
Right. Sports games are just perfect
Sports
for
games
that.
are
I mean, the
perfect.
stadium, you can't go to any stadium in the real world and not
Right.
be inundated.
In fact,
with ads.
it's inauthentic if it's not there.
In fact, that's why the auto racing games were the ones that for years were paying the sponsors, because you were used to the fact that there was a Winston or a Toyo ad on the bridge over the track at a certain racetrack, and all the aficionados knew if that track was going to be recreated effectively, that particular ad would be there. The advertisers were actually getting the income in addition to the free placement. They were getting the income because for verisimilitude they could do that. Whereas in other places, that leverage did not exist.
And I don't want to be climbing up the steps of Mordor in your game and pass a McDonald's sign. Right? That's going to blow it for
That
me.
wouldn't make sense, no.
I think the advertisers have to be smarter here, and the earlier you can start integrating the advertisers into your programming, it's no different than television as it is video games now. It's like the earlier you're sitting down as you're either developing the game or developing the TV show, you're sitting down with your advertisers talking about what makes sense and how to integrate the product where it makes sense, versus, you're right, something standing out. I mean, that's really key. So the advertising model has to change, just like this whole multi-platform medium has really changed. And the advertisers, I think, are just starting to not just starting, but the more active they are, the better it is for all of us who have to be creative.
And just bringing this back around in a circle, I think when you talk about a game publisher and developers need to extend the brand on multiple platforms, you can easily envision advertisers that are buying packages from a sponsorship standpoint, and it's important to them that they're in the game, but that also they're in the DVD episodes of the game and the Mobisode episodes of the game, and it's going to create a better ad story, a sponsorship vehicle that can offset the rising production and marketing costs of games. Could be the lifesaver of the game industry to have commercial dollars pouring into it.
Yeah, we're working with on an original with that we're co-producing with one of the major publishers right now. It's in its early stages, and within the first 2 weeks of development of the project, we were talking about the way in which we're going to integrate advertising as product placement, so that it felt, just based on the film tradition, of where you would never break the mood of the story, you'd never break the ongoing sense of energy, you'd never do anything that seemed obvious, and yet it's a major source of revenue for films. Within 2 weeks, on a 2-year project, within the first 2 weeks, we were saying, okay, let's keep in mind that we have to set the stage for this downstream.
And I guess, as you guys are all saying, I mean, really, there's ways to do it that can be unobtrusive enough or discreet enough that even if we recognize that it's there, it doesn't have to bother you. Just as I mean, we all see the Coke can in a movie, and we know what it is, we know why it's there, but the movie goes on. You know, we don't stop and they don't pause it for the commercial break like on television.
And Jodie Foster doesn't start to go, boy, this Coke tastes good, and turn the label towards the camera in case it wasn't.
Right. One last thing we were talking about, and we will take questions backstage, which maybe we can go into a little bit here if there's interest, is we are talking about TV programming for games. You know, we were comparing it to, say, a poker channel or a gardening channel, whatever, a very special interest cable channel. And I was a little skeptical over myself over whether I would really want to watch a video game show on TV when I could actually just be playing games. So what do you guys see as the opportunity for television to speak to gamers, and what kind of programming do you think we're going to see in the future?
Well, one of the, I think, the initiatives from our world is, you know, in the world of MTV, we try to help make stars. In the world of gaming and now the world of pro gaming, where there's tournaments going on, people are actually making money, and comparing it to poker, how poker a couple years ago, you couldn't even watch it on television. Now with the use of cameras and obviously personalities that are starting to drive, I think the same thing's happening in the world of gaming. You have leagues out there like the CPL, like Major League Gaming, Global Gaming League, World Cyber Games. There's all these tournaments that are happening now basically around the globe, and obviously in other parts of the world. You know, you find these are your #1 rated channels. So in aligning ourselves with CPL last year, we actually did our first ever live video game tournament on MTV. The broadband experience was live. We drove more traffic to MTV Overdrive than we ever did in the world of MTV Overdrive games. And then the TV show actually came after the broadband experience. So in this case, you've got broadband leading to your linear channel. I think that, you know, as you look at people like Fatality, who we were talking backstage, is like, can you name the top 10 gamers? Well, one of our jobs is to get those gamers out there, is really start to create personality so people care about it, especially with the younger adults who, you know, Fatality's making several $1 million a year off of endorsements. They call him the Michael Jordan of gaming now. He's won tournaments all over the world. You know, who knew you could actually make money off of playing video games? So we're trying that angle, as well as I just think watching people playing video games is never really going to work. So looking at a lot of different angles. And I also feel like broadband, in a lot of ways, is where this stuff should live. I mean, these are people that are on their computers all day long. That's what they want. They want to do it when they want to do it. It's not about appointment viewing anymore. It's not about I got to get home at 9 o'clock to watch a video game show. It's about let me call this up and look at it when I want to. So, you know, that's one of our big initiatives, is really trying to hone in on that area.
Also, we focus a lot on how to try to make gaming work on TV, so I'll throw a couple of comments too in there. One is, I believe broadband's a great place for video game content, but TV should absolutely not be overlooked, and it should be embraced, because you've got obviously this very great demographic that's so hard to reach, and obviously this young guy loves games, and it's an avenue to reach him. The mistake that a lot of people have made in trying to create programming about games is covering it like a technical pursuit, say, the tech TV approach rather than the MTV approach. And if you look at MTV as the greatest metaphor of how to service another industry as a marketing and entertainment platform, you'll realize pretty quickly that there was nary a music review, an album review. It was, yes, there was a news item, but it was campy in a sense. It was always a cultural play through music as a prism. Everything that we've tried to do is to sort of emulate that cultural play, and games are such a rich prism onto a youth culture because it taps into sports, taps into celebrity, it taps into science fiction, fantasy. It gives you so many creative opportunities to do something more and more entertaining and broadly appealing than covering it as something to report on as a technical pursuit. And I think that's the key to television and video games. I think it's the widest open, it's as wide open as anything else on TV.
Those are great points, and I wonder if, just to put you on the spot, like what kind of things, like what would specific examples be? Because you must have some.
Actually, no.
Okay, great.
No, I think actually Albie Hecht from Spike was just in the room, and what he did with the VGAs was a laudable, it was a respectable attempt to create a cultural prism that had music and celebrities and sports all come together. It's finding its voice and it's finding its legs. Ultimately, it will work. It will show that it actually is a prism on gaming culture. I think what we're doing on Fresh Baked Video Games, if I may say so, is worth noting. It's tapping into the irreverence, absurdity of gaming. Gaming is sort of an absurd medium. If you just let your character stop moving, lots of absurd things happen. It's inherent in the medium. So another example is in Fresh Baked Video Games, we have a machinima sitcom. I don't know if everyone's familiar with the concept of machinima, but it's using a game engine to animate real time in a sense. Video mods is an example of machinima. And we have a parody of Lethal Weapon called Medieval Weapon, powered by the EverQuest 2 game engine. And if you're an EverQuest 2 nerd, you go crazy for this stuff, and they do. But if you're just a guy who likes stupid humor, which it is, you're gonna laugh.
The interesting challenge with for machinima is that it's a lot like YouTube and MySpace in that it's a very kind of user-created community. It's caught on like wildfire with amateurs just doing this at home with their copy of World of Warcraft or whatever.
Right.
So for you guys to make professional versions of machinima,
Right.
Again, you sort of have to get over this kind of hardcore hump, right?
Oh, I think that's a great opportunity. It's like any time you create original entertainment, you have to have great writers and great producers, and the gulf between professionally written and produced entertainment versus amateur produced is enormous. And so when people see machinima, user-generated machinima, they think that could never play on TV. But you just put great writers and great producers involved in it, and you can absolutely, with the level of game design and the quality of game engines, you look at South Park and you realize that the quality of animation isn't so much the key as the humor and talent driving it. And I see great future for machinima personally.
I also think people are interested in the story, the making of the games, the couple documentary type shows we've done on gaming, True Life, I'm a Pro Gamer, we've done 2 of these.
Do
It's
those
probably
do
one of
well? They do well, those
I
documentaries?
think the True Life, I'm a Gamer, I could be misquoting myself, but I think that was probably one of the highest rated gaming shows on cable TV so far. It even rated higher than the VGAs, but that's okay. But anyway, because it tells a story. It tells a story of how these people are really following their dream. They're playing a game. They have their game. They're going to these competitions. They've given up their life. They train. It's kind of a sports story in many ways. So I think telling the story of people who make the game, people who develop the games, the interesting lives. I think that's also very relevant to how to make this interesting.
To me, a lot of that is a matter of getting it and respecting the industry. When you're talking about content like that, I could definitely see gamers getting behind that because you're taking their hobby, their pastime seriously, and you're giving them stuff that, behind-the-scenes stuff of a career that a lot of these kids probably are interested in, as opposed to what a lot of first-generation TV programming was more like, look how hip we are,
Right.
We're covering games now because we know you're playing them. Which I'm not saying anybody here did that, but the tone of it was almost condescending, or it could definitely be taken that way. Like, we like games too, kids, which ultimately is going to have appeal for about 5 minutes after they start
Right.
watching and realize how shallow it is. So I made this comment earlier, but I think a lot of this is actually going to be solved over time. That when a lot of the current generation dies off, and the only ones left are people who grew up with games their entire life, well, then games will just naturally be taken more seriously.
It's very grim.
Well, it's grim, but hey, I'm older than most of my readers, but I look forward to that day for them.
And just finally, I mean, it is in the production values, and people watch television for one reason, that is to be entertained. You're taking up a bit of my leisure time, so entertain me. So if you can present something, whether it's a video game or if it's a game of golf, in a manner that entertains me, keeps me hooked to my TV set for 30 minutes or an hour, you'll get that customer coming back. So that's critical.
And I think the other thing to think about too is just like the best of television in a variety of ways, and the best of film, there is at its highest end an ability to actually affect people's lives. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, had somebody come up to me and say, 20 years ago when I was a kid, I loved playing one of your games. And my grandfather and I didn't have much of a relationship, but we could play that game together. And I spent one entire summer where my grandfather and I just constantly played your game. And all my memories of him, all my relationship with him, that was the one thing we had in common. And it was a very emotional thing that this relationship had been opened by the game. Yeah. Those moments are rare, but if you think about the best TV shows you've ever watched where you're kind of misting up at the end of it, or a film or whatever, sometimes at its very best, directly or indirectly, games do have that potential to affect people's lives. And the more we can reach out to that, the more that we can do things at the highest level of what the other entertainment media can accomplish.
I also think you can't, not to go into a parenting thing because I am a parent, but you talk about the generation gap here. This is like against the culture for so many parents. They don't want to spend the money. They think kids playing video games is just a waste of brain power. They'd rather have their kids outside. They either rather have them watching television than they do playing video games. So as this kind of culture grows up, and now it's part of the norm, I think that's going to help the industry tremendously.
Right.
A lot of parents.
I see it in my own house. I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter who's a gamer. That's mostly my fault. But my wife, who is actually a high school teacher, is completely against gaming, let alone the fact that that's what bought our house. But that's something else.
Yes.
But she can't stand that my daughters will play games, and it just drives her crazy every time she walks by and sees her at the computer. That's a reaction she would not have if she walked by and saw her watching television.
Or reading a book.
Or reading a book, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. So we just all have to die. Should we open it up for questions? If anyone has any. I know you've been waiting very patiently.
I work for an ad agency, and we're trying to target for some of our clients teens and young adults. And we saw a Forrester report, a statistic that said that 94% of teens and young adults own a device that they use for playing games. And my question is, that includes boys and girls, which I think was a little counterintuitive for a lot of them. Are the teenage girls really out there gaming besides just adults?
They're there, but I think they're very compartmentalized. And so I think you have to go and look very hard at the data about places where they are. Sims would be one example. There are other places, but they're very much clustered. They are not distributed in the same patterns as the boys, so you can't look at the overall numbers and predict where you're going to find the girls. Another aspect is the average age of all gamers has been rising for the last 10 or 15 years. It used to be our median we aimed at was high teens. Now it's high 20s. So because you're looking at a younger audience, that also means you're going to have to do more research to look specifically at games that are aimed younger, because so much is now aimed older because of that demographic aging along with the electorate.
But they are definitely playing, but perhaps they're not playing as many hours on a weekly basis as their male counterparts, and they're also a lot more select in terms of the types of titles, and The Sims is a perfect example of that.
People love to say that girls and women are, a significant part of the gaming culture, and someday it will be. The contrarian, opinion would be it's still not a very efficient way to reach that target market. They're there, but it's embryonic, and someday, in some great future, they'll be a significant part of gaming. But gaming is driven by the teen male.
Right.
Well,
and
why
when there's
are
a great
not more games being developed primarily for the girls as the developers you are.
You know,
Why are we not creating more for the girls to be interested in?
I think there are a lot of structural issues there, but I actually think I've got two girls, one of which does not play a lot of games, but in general play things like Dance Dance Revolution or Karaoke Revolution. We're currently developing a dating and social game right now that will be, we think, pretty innovative, but which also, you know, fortunately or unfortunately may play into some people's worst stereotypes, but we think it won't. But I think to answer that question, there are a few issues. One is you've still got a game publishing and development industry that is, decisions are being made very much by individuals' preferences, and there are a lot of men in the industry. I'll say that at our Backbone studio, for example, 25% of our workforce are women, which is pretty unheard of, and I think we're doing a lot of more innovative games up there because of that. Two, I think in the United States in particular, the genre stratification is much stronger than it is in Japan, for example. I think right now you're seeing a lot more out-of-the-box ideas in game design coming out of Japan, whereas in the US, you know, you've got a bunch of publicly held publishing companies that are very, very, you know, nervous about going outside the box in terms of, you know, action games or shooters or those types of experiences. It's very hard to get a new type of gameplay greenlit right now, but as distribution outlets change, as people like yourselves get involved in promoting games or helping to shape the brand experience, I think that creates more room for innovation. As platforms such as the Revolution, which has a very unique and interesting controller, emerge, it will naturally lend itself to different types of gameplay. So I agree it's probably not there yet, but I don't think it's because it's not naturally interesting to girls.
Yeah, and it does definitely go back to rising development costs and risk aversion by publishers, and obviously as those costs are being offset by new revenue opportunities, I think we'll start to see more and more games being developed for a female audience.
Yeah,
Less games that where you blow up stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we view it as the greatest untapped expansion potential market. Actually, in the last 25 years in my career, half the games I've ever done have had women producers. And one of the reasons I've tried to do that and mix and match the leadership of my teams is simply trying to stack the deck on trying to reach the broadest possible audience. And I think it's paid off a number of times.
And you know, The Sims actually evolved over time. You know, you have, if you go back to when before it was released, it had that hardcore male gaming cred because it came from Will Wright, who had done the SimCity games. And so it was really only after the game had been out for a while that sort of the kind of dollhouse aspect of it. I mean, the dollhouse aspect was always there in The Sims, but more and more girls, like my daughter, picked up on that. And now EA, who was trying to, at the very beginning, sort of trying to not, it's not a dollhouse game because they wanted the guys to play it. This summer, they're actually releasing a few small kind of booster packs that are actually being marketed almost like Barbie sets. Like the sets are actually just like clothing packs. And these are being marketed specifically for teen and preteen girls. So they've actually just decided to embrace that market, which is pretty smart. We have another question? Yeah.
I want to know about the brand selection of any games. Are you in a position where you can create new brands if broken, like say I say Coke Black, it's a new Coke, or are you scared of brands like that because you don't know if it's a success, or you just want just Coke? I mean, are you in a position to help revitalize brands that may have fallen off? Like say Puma is not a big player, maybe you put Puma in a situation. What do you feel about that as far as revitalizing brands, or you staying away from brands that you're not sure of?
No, a brand does not make a video game cool. In fact, to the contrary. In fact, if anybody is actually launching a new brand, the best way to do that is to create awareness. How do you create awareness? A captive audience, an audience that is spending 93 minutes and not multitasking. It's a great way, based on recall numbers and also purchase intent or intent to see a movie, for example. It's one of the best ways to get in front of that audience and interact with their lifestyle. And the most important element of that is, as an advertiser, for example, you're actually endorsed by the game's developers and publishers because they have to approve every ad that is served to their audience. So it's an enormous endorsement.
I'm actually curious, what, is there something specific or some challenge in your work that prompted that question?
Well, no, in the urban sphere, we have a lot of time. I work in the urban hip hop field. They're always trying to, like the Mark Nichols thing, where people are breaking into brands. Are you in a, I guess, in a game awareness situation where we're saying like, okay, so and so is coming up next, or the next trend, something like that, so we make sure our characters are going to have those clothing, that type of situation, or is it just like whatever's popular at the moment, that's kind of mainstream, that's what's going to be in the game at the time?
Well, I think there may be a couple ways to look at that. I suppose from Nicholas's standpoint, you know, there are advertising opportunities that may fit the game, so you're actually looking for product placements or things that would work. From our standpoint as developers, we actually leave that in the hands of our creators, and they've got natural brand affinities. And you know, most of our folks are early adopter type people who are gonna, you know, if you know Puma's getting cool again, they're gonna have that already, and they're gonna naturally work that into the game, and we're gonna support them in trying to find, in our case, a product placement opportunity or something around that. But again, I think there needs to be authenticity on the creative side, and if our guys feel it's cool, we're gonna try and work that in the game.
I think
But there's a
interesting,
12-month lead, I would just say there's a 12-month lead time generally on anything that has any visual complexity. You assume there's a 12-month lead time. It has to get frozen down that far ahead, which means that the real sense of breaking things, the sense of month to month what's going on, that 12-month lead time sabotages that sense of immediacy.
That could
Right,
change
that's-
though with you
but
know with
that-
live.
that's-
In the
hard-
non-streaming stuff.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
hard-coded product placement.
Yeah.
However, with dynamic, you can
Yes.
change out. You can put Reeboks. That character could be wearing Nikes the next day. So
With Xbox
it's
Live, you can
completely flexible.
download you could download a whole
Yeah.
new outfit for your characters. But I think an interesting hint at the future of the answer to that question is what's going on with music in video games, in particular, say, using EA tracks or what Steve Schnurr is doing at EA, because that's just marketing for an album, right? It is product placement, and it's cultural. It's tapped into what's cool. And what you see there is, in fact, other people are gonna see major brands, in this case artists, being broken through. You know, I'm sitting there playing EA Fight Night Round 3 or Madden, and I'm hearing these songs over and over, and I hadn't heard it before, and now it's cool. Then guess what? Anyone else who wants to get something cool in pop culture is gonna recognize that works, and I think it is a great platform for breaking cool things that aren't yet, you know, mass market.
I also think you got to find, in the urban note, you got to find the right outlets. We haven't announced this yet, but we're going to be working with Global Gaming League on the Hip Hop Gaming League, which is Snoop. Snoop is the commissioner. This is all just starting this week. I'm serious. Snoop and 16 of his best friends, including people like Twista and Tyrese and Kane from D12. I mean, it's an online gaming tournament using Madden and NBA to, you know, Baller 2K, and I think those are the kind of like advertising outlets as well. It's like you may not buy in the game, but you're around the tournament, you're on the broadband experience. You know, you're an advertiser that's basically putting your product into a league that's really relevant to that audience. And I think more and more we're seeing a lot of those newly developed, you know, areas for very specific markets with very specific games.
Yes, in the back here.
Yeah, there is a very quiet little rumor that biggest untapped potential for games are the mothers of the kids who are there with the console after the kids go to bed. We're all laughing.
No, it's not a
No,
rumor.
it's true.
It's,
Yeah, you're right.
we're tapping them.
That's not me. by the way.
Absolutely.
I don't do-
You take a look at any online game, for example, casual games, the ones where you don't have that much time. You're a mother, you've got kids, you put them to sleep, you've got probably 25, 30 minutes to play. You go online, you play these games because they allow you to be able to complete several sessions over that time frame, and it is a fantastic audience, and yeah, we're already talking to those consumers.
And women are driving that market. There, the women are in the driver's seat, and all the publishers are looking at women as their primary audience, and then harvesting whatever they can get after that.
Yeah,
There's a big difference in console games and casual games, and older women and mothers are the largest drivers of casual games that you play online or on your PC.
And it's also PC titles. In fact, the most lucrative, if I can use that term, video game that we have within our network is a game that's coming out in the fall of this year with one of the studios targeting a female audience. The most lucrative because so coveted, so difficult to reach, and and yet this is a time to reach and talk to that consumer for 30 minutes to 60 minutes to 90 minutes of time. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just going to ask if you've seen a trend in custom games, like big brands going out and wanting to create their own game, partnering with whoever. We at one point were approached by Sony Pictures saying, for our GM client, they wanted to do a custom driving game for us. And I think the clients are afraid, well, this hasn't really been, they haven't done it, they're afraid of what that means. Is this a trend?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, we're doing a custom driving game for an automobile manufacturer right now.
and has it, has this been a successful route for other marketers?
I don't know. I don't think we have enough evidence internally, but we are hearing from, and these opportunities are coming primarily through advertising agencies. So I say there are three similar things that we're looking at right now that we may not have the capacity to take on, but you know, if you've got a handful of opportunities coming in, it tells us that it may be a trend.
In fact, it's been happening off and on for about
Right.
20 years.
Right.
And I think the eternal battle is, if you look at how mainstream games are built and what the budget is and the production values for a typical mainstream game, the ones that are well known, it's fairly expensive. And so for an advertiser, if you create a game that does not look good next to the mainstream games, then you can actually denigrate your brand instead of enhancing it. One reason to go to somebody like a Foundation 9 is that since they are creating mainstream games, they can advise you, and I would imagine are probably not interested in creating games that don't look good next to the mainstream.
I was recently called into a meeting in San Francisco by an advertising executive or a company representing Budweiser. And this company had been paying attention to World of Warcraft, which now has over 6 million users. And they thought that Budweiser might be able to get a piece of that pie. So they were picking different folks' brains in the gaming industry, including mine, about the idea of having a kind of like World of Budweiser online, so kind of Budweiser land.
So what happened to that?
Yeah, I pretty much told them to make web-based, Flash games and give it up.
Right.
But games in the sense of like true video games versus like a game that you can play online, like Pepsi last year for the Video Music Awards had one of the most high traffic, they sponsor Viewer's Choice, and it was actually a game to vote for your best artist, and it was a video game where you shoot other artists down, and if you're voting on you wanted in this My Chemical Romance to win, you're shooting down Fall Out Boy and you're actually attacking the other artists. So those types of games where they're really interactive and not so much I think online, I think can actually be very effective, and Pepsi got a huge amount of traffic for that.
Yeah, and in fact, I agree, because what I was commenting on is on traditional box type product. On terms of online and casual games, I agree with you completely. There's a lot of opportunities there that are much quicker hits.
Yeah, and advert games are great, but you still have to market the game that you're developing to advertise your product. So it is a double-edged sword. Plus, you have to pay, obviously, for the production of that game.
Back here? Yeah. You? Yeah.
One thing that you guys didn't talk about is something I'm fascinated with, is this whole area of alternate reality gaming, cross-platform. For example, Monopoly did that. They turned London into a whole Monopoly board. Or we've seen it with, I don't know if you guys are familiar to I think it was the Sci-Fi Channel had 5 Days to Midnight, and then they had a whole lot of interactive elements to it. Monk, even the Audi Heist thing, although it wasn't really a game, it had the offline online experiences. Or what is it, the poker one, where they're going out and doing the poker thing in the cemeteries and stuff, where you have this whole kind of virtual worlds environment game online with sweepstakes tie-in or whatever. Is anybody looking at that, or
Well, there's the two most notable examples that I'm familiar with are EA actually took a pretty hefty swipe at this with Majestic a few years back, and it didn't work for them. It was well thought out, at least it seemed from an outsider's perspective, that they invested a lot of time, resources, and thought into doing it. It came after the movie The Game, just sort of along those lines. And
right, if folks aren't familiar with that game, just very briefly to cut in, that was a game where there wasn't a game that you loaded. It was a mystery that took place in terms of the game would actually call your cell phone in real life.
Send you faxes.
It pestered you mercilessly, which I think was a problem with the game. There was there was push instead of demand pull.
It was a cool
Game
idea.
design.
Cool
in
idea.
theory.
But then the one time that it did work was, in my opinion, was in the marketing campaign for Halo, with the I Love
yeah.
Bees campaign, which was
Yeah.
in a sense an interactive, real-world, virtual world, cross-platform experience, which actually led to significant numbers of people around the globe playing in order to to fulfill a marketing objective. So to me, I look at that as a brilliant inspiration for things to come. I haven't seen people been able to unlock that, to evolve beyond it, and that was several years going back now, but it was a hint that it's totally possible.
And in fact, it had a prequel called The Beast, which was also done by the same company, called 42 Entertainment. And it was founded by Jordan Weissman, who coincidentally founded FASA, which was a traditional paper gaming company. So I think that's certainly a lot of the game designers I know in the community have been very influenced. There's kind of two schools of thought. One school of thought poo-poos it, another school of thought thinks that it's actually very innovative and future-looking game design. I'm actually amongst the group that really respects the 42 guys.
Any more questions? I think we just about out of time here.
Something like Vin Diesel's MMORPG that's launching, or whatever it is, with the whole Real Man franchise that's going to launch and then move into a movie, or even the X-Quest thing that Jim Bannister and Alex Sorokian are doing. You guys familiar with that?
Mhm.
X-Quest, do you see any hope for any of these kinds of things?
I think those are all, if you think about X-Quest, where it's basically, it's a location ride meets a reality show, so the characters are in a simulator, they're being shot as if they were in a real world, but it's a reality show and somebody can get kicked off the planet. Interesting derivative piece. I think it just represents, it's stuff on the edge, and then, if they find oil, a bunch of other people will drill wells around them.
Okay, I think we're just about up here, so thank you very much. Thanks to all the panelists here for all their comments, and thank you for listening.